So this is the B Corp webinar, Using Business as a Force for Good. It's fantastic to have everybody along today. The webinar is part of the B Corp month celebrations, which is July down here in New Zealand and Australia. And essentially the intention is really easy. It's basically we want to sort of grow the awareness of B Corp and what it's all about. So again, it's great to have you all along, and no doubt you'll all get something out of it. As usual, we're going to keep this pretty short and snappy, so it'll be just 30 minutes. And yeah, great to have you along. So basically, my name's Florian. I'm going to be your host. I'm joined by Hannah, who is Sustainability Manager at everyone's favorite footwear company, Allbirds. And also joining us is Bree, who is the CEO and founder of Ethique. And I think it's fair to say that Ethique are revolutionizing the fight against plastics with their beauty bar. Welcome to Hannah and Bree. It's a pleasure to have you along. And thinkstep, which is where I'm from, we are in the business of helping organizations take either their first or next steps on their sustainability journey. And that ranges from nutting out sustainability strategy, carbon footprinting, and also life cycle assessment. We decided to become B Corp about 2 years ago. And I guess what really resonated with us was that B Corp's vision is that businesses are the best for the world. So not necessarily being the best in the world, although that's obviously an ambition as well, but particularly best for the world. And after all, I mean, through what we do, we spend a lot of time working with businesses, helping them with their social and environmental impacts. And here was B Corp, which I guess is a rigorous certification that to a large degree, I guess, encapsulates what we're trying to achieve. That was sort of one of the real drivers for us. B Corp is essentially the sum of all the parts of our business that we're really proud of. So when my thinkstep colleagues, volunteer to help build environmental footprint expertise in Southeast Asia, or what have we done recently? We've set a science-based target for our own emissions. All those things, I guess, manifest themselves to us in our certification. And I'll touch on the certification process itself as well, because I know that, probably a lot of you guys are interested in that. In a nutshell, it's extremely rigorous. That's a good thing. So I guess it means that once you do achieve certification, it means something. And speaking from my own experience, I'd say we initially went into it more curious than anything. I think I'd be lying if I said that I opened the assessment for the first time purely with the intention of becoming certified. We were curious, and we really sort of saw it as an opportunity for self-improvement, I guess, to take the next step as far as building a better business is concerned. Because, I mean, down here, like, we're also growing, and we sort of saw B Corp as an opportunity to sort of set some of those fundamentals in place upon which we can sort of grow a bigger, better business. So getting all our ducks in a row, essentially. The assessment is split into 5 components, and essentially, depending on the size and type of your business, the question process itself is going to be different. And that essentially shows how we score across the 5 different impact categories which are assessed through B Corp. And while it is a tough process, like I can't stress enough that I think we really sort of caution against people sort of getting hung up on sort of making it to that 80-point mark, which is sort of required for certification. I mean, we sort of saw it, especially initially, is that the journey is just as important as the destination in this case. So when we went into it, it wasn't necessarily the intention immediately that we were going to get certified. It transpired that we did. We obviously had to implement some pretty robust changes as well to sort of get us over that hurdle. But that's, I guess, the continual improvement element of the B Corp certification. And in 2 years' time, it'll be time for us to recertify, and yeah, we'll look to build on what we've achieved so far. I summarize what we got out of the process, and I think essentially what we got out of the process and why I think that others should have a go too are one and the same. So for us, basically, I could probably sum it up in 4 points, and it's basically an opportunity to sum up and communicate all that thinkstep as a business is proud of within an encompassing and a rigorous certification. We're walking the talk on a lot of the things that we help our own clients with. And for us, it's also a challenge to lead by example. I think there's just under 3,000 B Corps globally. In New Zealand and Australia, there's far fewer, though apparently this is the fastest growing region down here in Australasia, so it's a sort of a chance for us to help out on the charge there as well. And lastly, and I guess this is the most important one that I see, is it's a chance to build a better business. I mean, I got no doubt that everyone here who's tuning in today is probably curious about what they can do to take their business to the next level. And we see B Corp as a brilliant vehicle for doing just that. So that's it from me, essentially. I hope that's been useful to set the scene a little bit. Without much further ado, I'm delighted to introduce Hannah from Allbirds. Hannah, over to you.
Great. So Allbirds was founded back in 2016, and we were actually founded as a public benefit corporation, which is a legal designation. And in the US, it means that we are not just accountable to returning value to our shareholders, but also to protecting and giving back to both the environment and the communities in which we work in. And it was actually after we converted the business into a public benefit corporation that we achieved and pursued B Corp certification, as Florian was talking about. And the reason the founders decided to start the company this way is that they knew that we make shoes as a product, but they knew that we needed a bigger reason for being than just being a shoe company that would act as a kind of a guiding light through a lot of growth and change that would come. And we were founded in reaction to a very specific environmental problem, which is that most shoes are made from plastic, and plastic comes from oil. And so our mission was really to remove synthetics from the footwear industry and replace them with natural, renewable materials. And we were really lucky that as a public benefit corporation, all of our investment was raised on this premise, and which really allows us to keep our mission at the heart of all the decisions we make every day. And B Corp specifically then was important because we're a small company, are now a growing company with a really global supply chain, and so we rely on third-party certifications to really back up and keep us accountable to our mission. And B Corp was that kind of gold standard full company certification. As Florian mentioned, achieving B Corp certification is tough. You really can't fake it, and you can't just choose to make one part of your business sustainable. You really have to show that you're making an effort on every single front. And I think we've seen that value ring true in two main ways. One is in hiring and retention, which is probably was a surprise when we started, which is that a lot of our employees actually come to us through the B Corp job posting board and specifically mention in their interviews that they want to work at Allbirds because we are a B Corp. And getting those people in the door really helps us be really aligned as the company is making decisions every day. But then secondly, I'd say as I go through the assessment, it really helps me make the case for some of the sustainability decisions by offering a benchmark of what good and what best in class really looks like. So for example, knowing that in order to get points on the B Corp assessment for renewable energy, we needed to make sure that all of the energy coming into our offices were from renewable sources. And having B Corp assessment to back me up really helped to get that decision made. And then finally, I'll close by saying that we are going through the recertification process right now. You have to recertify every 3 years, so this is our 3rd year, and the business has changed quite a lot. The last time we did the assessment in 2016, I believe the company was only 10 people or so, and now we're over 150, and we have offices in London as well as China, and quite a different exercise. But I think it's a couple learnings for me are one, that a lot of the information comes from the HR and people functions within the business, so it's a good chance to re-examine our internal benefits and employee wellness practices, in addition to kind of the environmental impact of our supply chain that we focus on more publicly. And two, I would kind of advise that as you're looking to recertify, building in mechanisms to track your B Corp metrics over time and keep track of the data points you're going to need when you recertify is going to be really helpful. That's a learning that I'll take into the next process. It's certainly not easy, but I think that's the point, is to make this a rigorous standard that you really have to be walking the walk in order to achieve, as Florian said. And I have been so impressed by the B Corp community, especially locally in the Bay Area, and the support that's there. And we are just so proud to be part of this, the leading edge of this movement, because it really does feel like the tide is changing as more public and large companies join the B Corp movement. So we'd be happy to be a resource to anyone interested in starting on this journey.
It sounds really encouraging as well, what's sort of going on over there. I guess sort of New Zealand and Australia are probably a couple of years behind what's sort of happening in the States at the moment. So yeah, I mean, the future for this sort of thing looks really bright. For now, it's my pleasure to introduce our next guest. I'm actually pretty sure that Bree and Ethique need no introduction, but Bree, through Ethique, from what I understand, you've diverted something crazy like over 3 million plastic bottles from the landfill, and you've managed to make people clean at the same time, which is cool. Tell us how you managed to sort of fit B Corp in and around all of that.
Sure. So quick background on Ethique. So I started Ethique about 7 years ago from my kitchen with this grand idealistic viewpoint that we were going to save the world from plastic bottles. And this was a little bit before plastic was the global issue, or people were aware of it to the degree that they are now. I saw that the cosmetic industry was hideously wasteful. It's a frivolous industry. Everybody uses, at least ideally, hopefully. So it's an area that can create a large amount of change. I started Ethique just as in producing bar versions of your everyday cosmetics like shampoo, conditioner, moisturizers, and that way, instead of using a plastic bottle to package them, we can use compostable cardboard. So all of our bars are completely zero waste, and we have everything from pretty much everything you'd find in your bathroom. You're right, we have it's actually gone up from 3 million, so we've recalculated, which we do every month, and it is now 4.2 million plastic bottles we have diverted from landfill. When I first started it, the goal was 1 million by 2020, so we've beat that pretty quickly. The next goal is now 50 million by 2025. B Corp was very early in the piece for us. I get asked where I heard about it, and I honestly can't remember. I think it was a local B Corp. They're based in Christchurch. I think it was the first B Corp in New Zealand, and they spoke so highly of it. So whilst the product they were producing was actually plastic, ironically, they wanted to do so in as an environmentally friendly way as possible. And they basically encouraged me to have a look. So it's really, really important to me that people believe what we say at Ethique, that we're a trusted brand, and the way to do that is through external validation and external certifications. And we have lots of other ones, we're certified vegan and certified cruelty-free and palm-free and all those others, but there's nothing really out there that's all-encompassing, so that looks at the way you treat your staff, the way you're owned, your structure, and your environmental impact. There's nothing that covers it all, and B Corp ticked those boxes. So I remember looking with some trepidation at the pretty terrifying looking assessment, actually, way back, well, I would have been about 4 years, maybe even 5 years ago now. I had no real idea how to approach it, but really, like the saying goes, how do you read an elephant? A bite at a time. Very stoked with that first result. I think we ended up with 106, which annoyed me because to be fair, I wanted 200. I'm a very competitive person, and the fact that we didn't get full marks bothered me. We've since recertified again, and I'm sitting at about, I think it's 117, which is great to see this improvement, because obviously every year these requirements do increase for B Corp. And what's really nice is it makes you think about things you don't think about. Obviously, we're very sustainability focused from an environmental standpoint, but it also made us think about how we involve all stakeholders in what we do. So how we balance what our customers want versus our shareholders. Obviously, in other companies, shareholders' needs come first and foremost, but at Ethique, it's first it's our staff, then it's our customers, and then it's our shareholders. A different way of managing it makes your company stronger, and again, it goes back to your bottom line. It was scary to look at initially, but the more you work through the assessment and the more the team, people from B Lab help you understand what it is they're really truly looking for, it becomes really quite manageable. I wouldn't want to do it retroactively. It would be much harder to take a company like, let's use a really big example, Unilever. It would be very difficult to do this process, but certainly if you're a business that's set up to try and do a little bit of good in the world, you won't find it that difficult to start with. It is a robust system, and it's definitely one you can trust. Go ahead and do it. Even if you don't hit that magical 80, it doesn't matter, because it's something to work towards. It's something that makes you think about what it is you're doing, and it gives you that purpose beyond making money, which most people nowadays just find is not what gives them joy in life. You need a purpose beyond making money.
Thank you very much for that, Brie. Yeah, that was really informative. It's interesting that all our stories echo a similar sentiment, which is sort of get in and get stuck in and have a go. The worst that'll happen is you learn a little bit. So we're going to now open for questions from the audience, and I'm just going to sneak in here in advance. And this is a bit of a rhetorical question, but you sort of touched on this a little bit, Brie. So I'm going to put this out there. You know, some might say that, I guess, by nature of Ethique or Allbirds, that you're already sort of set up for B Corp certification because, you know, both your organizations feature a sort of strong sustainability angle just through what you do. So if there's some people out there who work for, now I caution against using this word, but a more traditional business, say, I don't know, manufacturing forklifts or something, and they sort of came to you guys and said whether B Corp certification was something they should look into, what would you say to them?
I go back to the example I used about the first B Corp I ever met, which was actually Eagle Consumables, who are by his own definition, importing landfill, right? So the product they produce is not the best for the environment. However, they are New Zealand's first B Corp. They are absolutely leading the charge to a purpose-driven business, and they do that in so many ways. The way they treat their staff, the way they run their business in general, the way I believe they've got a pretty incredible charitable or sort of a giving back scheme. So, just because your product isn't designed from the word go to, I guess, to rid the world of plastic, for example, it doesn't mean you can't still have a purpose. Not every product is going to have a benefit. It's simply not possible. But the way you run your business can have a serious benefit. It can have real purpose.
There are parts of the assessment that open up if your product is inherently serving the environment. But as I mentioned, almost more importantly is how you treat your employees and the extended employees in your supply chain and the types of inputs you use on a daily basis rather than it is about the product specifically.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, essentially it's just as much about how you do what you do as it is about what you do, right?
Exactly.
That's actually a nice segue in terms of sort of the employee aspect of what you just mentioned there, Hannah. We've had a question come in asking, what is the employee experience of working for a B Corp organization? And I guess you can potentially answer that, Hannah, from your own perspective, or you also said that in terms of the B Corp job postings, that you guys get sort of a few inquiries or a bunch of inquiries through that. So what is sort of that appeals, do you think, to employees about that?
In the same way that the B Corp certification signifies to our customers, hey, don't just trust us and our marketing materials, but trust this third party that has looked into us extensively and given us a stamp of approval. It does the same thing for our employees. And so before they even walk in the door, they can be confident that we're not just out there talking about sustainability, but that we're actually doing it. So that's one big part. But the other really interesting part that I've found as I've come to work at a B Corp is how much the community is about supporting all employees in all functions at B Corps, and not just, I'm the person that manages the assessment, but anyone can go to the local B Corp happy hours and meetups, and a marketing person or a supply chain person from Allbirds can get on the B Corp online message board and find someone in those functions at other companies who are trying to figure out how to do their jobs in a more sustainable way as well. So that's really the nice thing about B Corp, I think, for our employees, is it's not just for the sustainability function, it's to support members in every function of the business.
We've had another question come through asking about sort of whether the B Corp certification includes any requirements to quantify environmental impacts of an organization. For instance, if you're using sort of a life cycle assessment of a particular product, and I'll have a go at that because that's sort of right up our alley what we do. So one of the 5 components or impact areas of B Corp is the environment. And the environment questions, there are some relatively broad ones and there are some relatively refined ones. And there are questions from memory. It's been about 18 months, 2 years since I went through the certification process, but they definitely do ask whether you have sort of quantified particular impacts. That's not to say that they necessarily pass judgment on what those impacts are, but they definitely, from memory, they definitely want to see that you've sort of been thinking about whatever you're doing in a quantifiable way. So, and I guess that sort of leads on from that, it's difficult to manage that which you can't measure. So there are definitely sort of specific questions related to sort of quantifying environmental impact. Now, obviously, it's an extremely broad assessment, and the environment is only one of 5 impact areas. So don't expect a whole chapter on those sorts of questions. That is definitely something that's covered. And additionally, sort of the impact assessment does change from year to year. And depending on which particular industry you're in or what you're doing, the questions are going to be slightly different. So obviously, if you're in a service-based industry, you're going to probably have less questions which relate to a particular physical product. So they have sort of gone through and ironed that out. Now, are there sort of any sort of particular challenges you think that are sort of around being a product-based B Corp as opposed to a services-based one?
Not challenges specifically. I do think it's you're going to spike on different questions on the survey, whether you're a product or a service-based organization. I think the one thing that we have found a little bit challenging as a product-based organization, we do the calculations about how much less CO2 or water is used to make our product, and therefore by buying our product, you are quote unquote saving some of those emissions, for example, but it doesn't, a shoe doesn't exactly enable a better life for some people. I mean, it does through our donation program, but not in the same way that, like a water purification straw might. And so there's a high burden of proof with a physical product like ours to signify that it is actually inherently improving the environment. That's just on us to get our ducks in a row around measurement and reporting.
One quick last question probably applies to both of you, and that was what do you think was the biggest surprise that you sort of came across during the certification process, or in your case, particularly recertification?
I think the biggest surprise from my perspective was how, again, it goes back to how we're set up, but how easy it was to prove. So I was quite concerned that it would be very paperwork heavy, and rightfully so. There is an auditing process, but it was easy to put that paperwork and put it together essentially, and to prove it's not an insurmountable challenge, which I'll be honest, I was quite overwhelmed by it the first time we did it, because the idea that you're audited, your paperwork trail must be really, really perfect. It seems like an overwhelming task, but it is actually, again, eat an elephant a bite at a time. It is perfectly doable and achievable. Otherwise, I did find it relatively straightforward. It just kept chipping away at it. No real surprises.
Yeah, I think that the thing I would add as a surprise for us is there are 200 or 300 questions in the assessment, and I think the highest scoring B Corps have scores in the 150 range, and that means that no point is worth more than a couple points in itself, and most of the questions I would say are only worth a fraction of a point. And so that means in order to achieve a high score, you really have to score well across almost all of the questions, which was surprising to me as I filled it out, but I think has reaffirmed sort of the significance of the certification. And what makes it so special is that it's not easy. And in order to be certified, you really have to walk the walk.
Nice. That's a perfect place to wrap it up. So I'd like to thank you both very much for your time, sharing your insights and knowledge with us.